Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this third episode of Relatics What's New, where we bring you the newest features in Relatics live and directly from our studio in Hardingsveld, Giessendam, straight to your screen. As you're used by now, my name is Sebastian and I'll be your host for today. And I'm joined here in the studio by my lovely colleagues, Ruben Tucker and Martin Dijkstra. Welcome, gentlemen. How was your break? Did you manage to load yourself up again?
Yeah, it was really good. All rested and happy to show some new features today.
What about you, Ruben?
Yeah, doing well. I wished for a bit more sun during this Dutch summer, but other than that, we're doing good.
All right. Well, nevertheless, very happy to hear. Now, we will dive right into it because, first of all, we have a lot of entities today. We're very happy to see that. And we also have a chock-full agenda full of good stuff. Now, just per the last episodes, if you have any questions, you can send them in via our platform, and we will either try to answer them on screen for you, or one of our account managers will get back to you after the show to give you the answers you're looking for. Now, gentlemen, let's dive right into it, because we have some very exciting stuff. First up is a new application integration. Now, what Relatics is good at is bringing insights into your project complexity. And for that, you have loads and loads and loads of data. However, Relatics does not manage all of this data because different disciplines have different specialized tools where they do their work in. Now, in order to keep track and sight of this data, we aim with Relatics to integrate these applications. Think, for example, of a document management system where you keep your document structures and all your documents. And in Relatics, via SharePoint coupling, the integration, you are able to have insight into your documents. Now, Ruben, we have exciting news because we've added a new category. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So we're very excited to show our first standard integration with a geographical information software application, or GIS in short. And our development team has been constantly working on expanding the list of standard integration. And for this integration, they've worked together with Esri, the people behind ArcGIS. So we really want to thank them for the beautiful cooperation that we had for this integration. And the result is a new standard integration in Relatics. And both tools, of course, are frequently used on large construction projects. So things like large infrastructure projects, you'll probably use Relatics for various disciplines, or you might use ArcGIS for your geographical information. And this works a lot like our previous standard integration. So examples like SharePoint or maybe Autodesk Docs in setting it up. So it's very easy to set up such a standard integration if you have the information that you need, like a client ID, a client secret, and maybe information to point to a specific layer. That's basically it. If you fill out that information, you can have this standard integration set up in Relatics in, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes.
Don't keep us waiting. Can you maybe show us?
Sure. I would love to show you. So I'll be moving on to Relatics. And I'm already in a workspace called Watergate Bridge, which is, of course, a fictional project. But it's perfect for this use case, because when you start a large infrastructural project, like building a bridge over a large river, you will most likely start with all kinds of findings during base construction. And I wanted to show you this. So we already have some findings in the system, but think about findings like archaeological findings, or maybe debris, or maybe even unknown cables, anything that can have an impact on the realization of your project. Now, of course, these findings will happen at exact locations. And this is, of course, geographical information, which you would normally show in ArcGIS. But we want to use this information in Relatics. And for that, we have our use case. So we have our Watergate Bridge with findings, and we want to link those two locations. And that's why I have the graph view open right here, because we wanted to show you that we added an element called location. And as you can see, there's a little icon right next to it that indicates that this is an external element, meaning that the information from this element is managed outside of Relatics. Now, as Sebastian stated, Relatics is all about getting insight into the complexity of your project, but by achieving these standard integrations with applications like ArcGIS, we can actually give you insight into the complexity of your entire project outside of Relatics as well. So the geographical information is managed outside Relatics in ArcGIS, but we can actually synchronize that information in Relatics. And of course, we can expand upon that. So we can actually map properties of ArcGIS onto properties in Relatics. As you can see, when I move to my locations right here, you can actually see the ref ID and the name, but we can also add other properties like area, for instance, or if it's on site, yes or no, just to give you that complete look on the impact these findings are going to have on the realization of your project.
All right.
Yeah, so I wanted to show a bit more for the users. So I'll move on a bit quicker than we were planning. But this is, of course, your overview. So you're just looking at an entire list of the locations that are managed from ArcGIS. And this is synchronized periodically. So that's every 15 minutes, you'll get a synchronization of these locations. But what I wanted to show you, and I'll close the graph view so you get a better view of those locations, is I can actually click on the new tab that I've added here, or that's been added here because of the integration, which allows me to get a full map view in Relatics. And the cool thing about this is that it's based on the ArcGIS map, but this is actually an open source Relatics map. So this map is specific to Relatics, which means I can just look around the map, zoom in and zoom out to get a full view of the scope of work which is needed for this project, and it maps all those locations that are synchronized from ArcGIS. But the cool thing about this is that all users have access to this map. So if a user has access to the element location, if they are allowed to view locations, they can actually click on that tab and look at the map to really get a grip of that geological information. And I can even go further than that, because I can click on any specific location from the map and I'll see the detail view of that specific location with information that's of course relevant to that location, and I can just click on any location like that. And the last part I wanted to show you, and this is I think really cool. So we've seen the maps on the overview, and we've seen the map on the detail view, which by the way zooms in on the specific location of that location, or on the geographical information of that location, which is of course very handy. When I move back to just regular Relatics, because I of course want to use this information in Relatics and I want to relate it to other elements of my system engineering model, I can actually go to my findings, which I already created. And let's say I move to something like the salamander. So there is a geological team that has found a couple of endangered species for this construction site, which of course is going to have an impact on the realization. If I then move to the table that allows me to select locations, I can double click, and of course I'll get my table view where I can just select a couple of locations, but I can actually use the map here as well. So again, I can just use that map to really get a feel of where these locations are situated, and I can just check them with the checkbox that appears next to them, locate the species that were part of these findings, and then just hit apply, and then I have my information related. Lastly, which is of course also a cool feature with the standard integration, if I still feel like I need to see more information in ArcGIS, let's say I want to add locations or edit locations, they are of course managed in ArcGIS. You are able to go to a location and then go to the map and actually open that external application, which will take you to ArcGIS, where you can resume your work on the locations, where you can either edit or maybe move around a bit of the locations, or maybe add something, or maybe even remove something. So we're very excited about this new standard integration.
All right. Thank you, Ruben. So with this new application integration, Relatics tries to bridge the gap between what's inside Relatics and the big world outside Relatics. Now, this brings me to the next feature, because what we see very often is that within the Relatics workspace, you have a menu or an organizational breakdown system where you have a list of persons. However, this can also include external stakeholders, and this is actually not a one-on-one copy of people who actually work in Relatics and have a Relatics account. But now, with this new feature, we bridge this gap as well. Martin, can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I will start showing Relatics immediately. Well, I think it's safe to say that basically every system engineering model that you find in Relatics will have a person type element in the model. This is what you also see here on screen. There it is. And so I have my whole system engineering model, and like I said, basically every model contains a person element. And here you see a bunch of persons, basically 20 in total. And of course, like you used to, if you click on one person, Amelia Jones in this case, you can see all the relationships and all the responsibilities of this specific person. But like you said, not all of these persons are maybe part of the normal project team. There may be external stakeholders that also have to be within the workspace, but they don't necessarily have an account. But there are certainly users that do exist both as a person in the workspace and they also have a Relatics account. I will show you that as well. This is also the case in this workspace. If I go to users in the workspace settings, you can see that I have 11 users here, and some of them are also a person in the workspace. But of course, they are separate entities in the database, so to say, and they are not linked together. So that's something our developers created now, that you can actually link those two together. I'll explain later why this comes in handy, but I will first show you how you can do this. For example, Amelia Jones, the person I just clicked on in the workspace, I see here as a user as well. And I now have a new column on the right called linked element. And here I can actually link an individual user to a person from my workspace. Just by clicking on this icon, I'm getting here a selection from all the persons from the workspace. So again, you can see that those 20 persons are here, and you can just now link them together. I can do that for a couple. Well, you get the idea, I think, and I will also do that for myself. And then they're linked together. I'll also, when I go back a little bit to the person overview, something which stands out now as well, that maybe I have to zoom in a little bit. Through this small icon, and if you hover over it, you can see that this person is now linked to a user. So this counts for, in total, 3, including myself.
All right, that's really cool. So with this new feature, Relatics now actually knows that you as Martin are logged onto Relatics and you correspond with Martin in the workspace itself. But the burning question that I have is, what is it actually good for?
Well, it offers actually quite some extra possibilities for some cool features in the software. One of those is what we now implemented, and it's what we call to-dos. And basically, you can consider a to-do as a small personal task that you have to do. For example, writing a draft requirement text, or approving a requirement, or maybe reviewing a control measure, or simply executing an action from a meeting. Those are all small personal tasks you have to do to basically move a specific item further along its life cycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so to-dos helps the end user actually keep track of the work that they have to do. Can you show us a little bit?
Yeah, Relatics now indeed can manage those to-dos for you. Basically, I have a couple of them in this workspace. For example, with actions, I have here a use case which is called execute actions. It basically shows all actions that haven't been started yet. And as you can see, different people are responsible. And some of them I have to do. And now we have a new button here in the ribbon which says my to-dos, and you already see a small icon saying 5. And if you click on it, you get those to-dos or actions in this case that are which are for me. The funny thing is, how a to-do is built up is basically a combination of a property value and in combination with a relation to a person. So in this case, when an action has the status not yet started and it's connected with the executor, a relationship to a person, that is the definition of a to-do. But it can be, you can create all kind of different definitions basically. The nice thing is although such a to-do is based on those two fields, a property and a relationship, it's not necessary to display them in a table. Basically, this to-do will appear everywhere in each overview that you can have. So whether it's all elements or my view or a use case, you will see them. It's also, I can show you when I go to the all elements, the status property is displayed here, not the responsible person. But again, if I click here, I will get the same results as before. And this is not something which you can do only on one type element. Of course, you can do it on every type element. If I go, for example, to control measures, I get to see an overview here of all risks with their control measures. I have a specific use case for reviewing control measures as well. So it gives me all control measures which have to be reviewed still. And again, I see here that there are 3 that are related to me. And if I click on them, I get immediately those 3 to-dos, basically. I have another one also for requirements. I have here a writing use case. Basically, this use case is meant for writing the first draft requirement text. So it gives me all concept requirements, which doesn't have a text yet. And again, you can see here there are somebody is responsible for doing this. And again, here's a whole list. But simply by clicking on it, I get my own 3 requirements that I still have to handle.
All right, so this seems really intuitive and it's not very difficult. Well, you don't have to toggle anything, every table has it. But can you show us maybe how do you define a to-do? Is that difficult to do?
No, it's basically just a matter of a few mouse clicks. For example, I have here another use case as well for approving requirement texts. So this overview of this use case shows all requirements with a requirement text, but they still have to be approved. And again, all different kind of people responsible for that. And it's a different relationship, obviously, as well. So it's not a responsible relation, but has to be approved by person relation. And if I want to create a to-do for this, then and it's something that the power user can do, I just go to the settings of the type element, so requirement in this case. And if I go to advanced, you can see that basically a to-do has 2 settings which are related to it. First of all, the lifecycle property. So this is the property of the element that tells me something about the lifecycle of this requirement in this case. And I think 9 out of 10 times that would be a status property, but you can choose whichever you like. And here you can see those to-do definitions. So as you can see, we already have one here. I can open it as well. And this is the one I just showed you. And here you can see that this to-do is something is a to-do when the requirement has a concept status in combination with the has responsible person relation. But like we said, we want to create a new to-do definition, so I'll just do that. I will choose a different property value, and because concept is already in use by the other to-do. So I choose to be approved, and I will choose the has to be approved by relation. And simply by creating it and updating it, it will now appear here as well. And you can just click on it, and immediately you get to see those 5 to-dos that are for you. The nice thing is actually, you can see that regarding approving requirements, I have 5 to-dos. For writing, I had 3. And the funny thing is, if you go, for example, to all elements, you can see them that they're added up together. So here you see that there are 8, and if I click on them, I get those 8 requirements, which can either mean I have to still write a text for them, or I have to approve the text that is filled in. So basically, as a summary, what is it to do? It's basically a collection of a certain property value, a life cycle property value, in combination with a certain relationship.
All right, that's very cool. And yet another big step in making our users' life even easier. Now, in that same vein, to-dos themselves were not the only thing in this corner. So Martin, maybe can you tell us a little bit? Well, a little birdie told me that there was another thing, so.
It's correct. We have indeed a complete different new feature as well. Maybe some of the viewers already noticed that here's a new home icon. And basically, this is complete new start page in the workspace. So this page opens the first time when you open a workspace during the day. It's not every time, because if you switch a lot between workspaces, you might get tired of it. But the first time during the day, you can see it. And of course, like I just did now, you can always go back to it as well. And what it shows is basically a summary of all different kinds of useful information, the workspace image. You can see the project time as well, which is based on the time zone setting in the workspace settings. So this is a project in Australia. So you can see maybe the next time we have to consider organizing our webinar a little bit earlier if we want those people to watch it live as well. Here is a tile which shows me my to-dos, the ones I just showed you before. So that's really easy access to those to-dos, and you can also click on them, and then you're going straight away to those personal to-dos that you have to do still. If I go back, the same counts, of course, for requirements and actions. That's obvious. Here is a list of all the power users within the workspace, and it comes in handy. Sometimes you're in the project maybe that in which you don't know the power user, and maybe if you have a small request, for example, you can now just use the email address is displayed as well. So you just click on the email address and you can send an email. And the last 2 tiles below, this one shows all the last 5 elements that I visited in the workspace. And again, I can also click on here, so I can just quickly jump back if I want to. And the last tile is showing the total number of users within the workspace, which gives me an idea, how big the workspace is. And if I'm a power user, I can also click on the number, and then I jump straight to the user overview in the workspace settings. So this is a whole new start page, basically, to make the life of an end user even a little bit easier. You can imagine now we have this. This offers new, possibilities as well for the future to expand it, to add new types of useful tiles. So a nice new addition.
Thank you, Martin. So with the home screen, it's quite literally a new page, a new functionality in Relatics. Now, with ArcGIS, the application integration, with to-dos, with the linking of people, with the users in Relatics, our developers have clearly not sat still over the summer break. And that's because we like to keep on innovating. But we do not only innovate with new functionalities, but we also aim to improve on existing ones, because market feedback is very dear to us and inspires us to do even better. Now, in this segment, we will touch upon some of these incremental improvements, where we will share some enhancements, improvements, and refinements of already existing features. So with that, I'm going to switch back to you, Ruben, because especially middle and derived elements, the fundamentals were there, but there was still some room for improvement in the user experience. Can you guide us through it?
Sure. Well, there's always room for improvement, of course, but we've actually, or our colleagues from development, I should say, made some changes to the way middle elements and derived elements work in Relatics. And it's a kind of a fundamental change, because for the settings of a middle element, which I won't completely show in this webinar, if you want to know more about setting up a middle element, you can always watch the previous webinar or dive into the Relatics Essentials videos on our website. But what we've changed with the settings is that in the previous iteration, we had restricting relations, basically allowing users to only create middle elements on existing combinations with between the origin and the target element. Now, for this example, I'm going to use verifications with requirement and objects, because that's the most used instance of middle elements. So I'll move on to Relatics and show you how it works. And this is just a quick overview. So I won't be setting up an entirely new middle element. It's just to get a feel for what changed for middle elements and derived elements. And I made a quick addition, because I wanted to enter the workspace and see that beautiful start page up front. So that's a quick addition. But when I move to the view for the project data, and of course, I'm going to start at the graph view, I can actually see my verification right here. I can zoom in a bit. It's the verification that's a middle element between requirement and object. And what I was talking about, and I'll open the view here as well, is when I go to the settings of a middle element, we can actually see that now we're not talking about restricting relations, because at Relatics, we don't really like to restrict users from using certain functionalities. Now we're more talking about requiring a certain relation. So now we can say that a middle element is required for every combination between a requirement and an object, which means that if everything should work correctly, I should have a verification per requirement object combination. But the main change for this is that now I am still allowed to create middle elements on non-existing combinations if I choose to do so, which wasn't possible in the previous settings, which of course can happen, because if you're working with verifications, you might want to create a verification on a requirement object combination that hasn't been linked yet. So Relatics will not prevent you from doing so. However, it will give you a warning or a message saying that you're introducing a quality violation to the data. So we're more about giving you that insight into if the data is correct, rather than preventing you from issuing or doing certain tasks. Which is, I think, a very important change to how middle elements work. And I think it gives a lot more freedom to the users on using middle elements and derived elements. And it adds another cool feature, because by requiring or by making that middle element mandatory or requiring it per combination, I can actually move to the origin element, which in this case is requirement. And you can actually find, under the quality reminders functionality, you can find all the requirements that are missing a verification. So you can easily find those combinations where you still have to do your work, where you still have to fill in those verifications. And this is just a part of the normal quality assurance functionality, which you can also use for other relations. Again, if you want to know more about quality assurance, move over to our Relatics Essentials videos and Relatics Advanced videos, or check our website for more help about that. But I think that's a very, very cool addition, cool new feature.
Definitely, and definitely some new features and additions that will make our power users very happy.
Yeah.
But of course, we don't only have power users, we also have regular end users. Tell us, do we have some treats for them as well?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, actually, most of the treats are for the users. So this was just more for the power users, but for the users, a lot has changed when we look at middle elements. So again, I'm moving to Relatics, and when I open the view for our verifications, well, we already know you're going to get these two grouping columns indicating that you have your object requirement combinations, and next to that, you have your middle elements, in this case, verifications. That's, I think, the easiest example. So you can quickly see which verification belongs to which requirement object combination. And for that, we also had a show or hide empty button to also show combinations which didn't have a verification yet.
So, okay,
Yeah.
Because I saw the show and hide button.
Yeah.
But I also see another button next to it.
Yeah, I'll get back to that later.
Okay.
But for the show and hide empty, there's been a change. Namely, we've added, or our colleagues from development have added, a counter to the button, basically showing you that when we are looking at these groupings, we can now tell that there are apparently 5 objects which are still missing verifications. And by clicking on that button, we will, of course, add those objects to the view. But we can imagine that if the data starts growing in your project and this list starts to get longer and longer, it's difficult to really spot that one object that's missing verification. So that counter is going to help you to identify how many empty rows there are still in this view. Then I want to move to our new functionality, which has also been added for the users. So I'll move to Relatics again. You'll see that button to the right. This is actually a new feature, which is a swap button, which allows me to do something very cool. It's actually the feature I'm most excited about. By clicking on the swap button, I am able to swap the groupings. So I'll do that again. Previously, I was looking at objects with their requirements and their middle elements. So from the viewpoint of the object, which is the first group in the first column, I can now just swap that around and look at the requirements with their related objects and then their middle elements. So I can just swap back and forth between the grouping just by clicking on that button, which is of course very, very cool. And the added feature of that is, and you might have noticed it when I clicked on the swap button, the counter, which is on the show empty, also swaps around. So right now I'm looking at this view from the requirement perspective. You can see that the counter has turned to 20, indicating that there are 20 requirements which are still missing a verification according to the rules I set in my system engineering model.
All right. So that's all really good, really cool. But I noticed something, because with middle elements, you always have an origin and a target. And we used to have 2 menus for every middle element construction, but now one has disappeared. What happened there?
Yeah, well, this is kind of self-explanatory, but by adding that swapping functionality, we basically eliminated the need for 2 entrances to the middle element view. So we've eliminated the need to also have that entrance below the target element. So again, I'll move to Relatics. You can see the entrance right below requirements. I can maybe zoom in a bit. Because requirement is the origin element of the middle element. So you'll always find the entrance there, but you will not find that entrance under objects anymore, because I can just simply click swap to achieve the same functionality. So this is, of course, very handy for our users, with the added benefit of making the elements list a lot more efficient in navigating through your menu, and keeping it neat and tidy, especially when you have multiple middle elements, and for each middle element that will be 2 entrances. We've basically halved that amount to just 1 entrance per middle element, which is a lot more efficient.
Yes, I have to say, working with groupings sometimes could be a little bit difficult. And I have to say, all these improvements and changes are bound to make my life a lot easier. I'm really happy to see these. But something tells me that this is not all.
No, there are still two big new features for middle elements and derived elements. Namely, and I'll move to Relatics again. When I'm looking at my verifications overview, of course, I want to look at specific combinations. And what we've noticed is that when this list gets really long, it's difficult to find that right object and that right requirement for your verification combination. So what we've added is the ability to filter on your grouping columns. And just by clicking on the filter feature right at the top in the ribbon, I can just add a filter and filter on any property of the object, which in this case I'll use the name, and I can just fill in an object and then apply the filter to allow me to filter on that specific object with the related requirements, so I can start doing my verifications. And if I want to filter on requirements, I simply swap around my grouping and apply a new filter on the requirements. So let's say I want to filter on the requirements which have a status of applied. Just to make sure you guys know that I'm not lying, I'll just add the status to this overview so you can see the applied requirements. You can also see there's a requirement that's not applicable, some requirements which have the status to apply. I can just add that filter for requirement, select the property of requirement, select the status, and then select the value I want to filter on, and voila, now I have my view filtered on that specific status. And that's not all, folks. There's even a cool new addition to the grouping columns for even more freedom for the users. So if I, for instance, want to see more about my requirements, I could also add the requirement text with which you most likely want to see to understand what the requirement is about. But what we've noticed is that those requirement texts are often cut off because of a lack of space. So what we've also added is the ability to drag columns. You can see it right here. The requirement text is now cut off because we don't have enough room for our requirement. But by simply dragging that column a bit wider, I can now see everything that I want to see. So you have a lot more freedom.
Goodness gracious, there's a lot of improvement in the grouping columns, and we're not quite done yet, because there's also been some changes to the rows, to the columns next to the grouping column.
Yeah, so this is the last major change to middle elements that we want to show. Because we are working in a verification overview, and again, I'll move to Relatics. As you can see, we have some empty rows because there are still verifications that need to be completed. But what we've added is a sort of inline ghost row. And basically, this means that this is an empty row in which you can start editing. This is something that doesn't really catch the eye per se, but it's a very, very cool new feature. It's very important because it allows me a couple of things. First of all, Relatics can assume that because I have certain requirement object combinations, it can kind of find out what the minimum amount of rows is. But the coolest feature is that I can just start editing in a specific property, and Relatics will automatically create a verification for me. So that's your inline ghost row. You can just start filling in a certain property, and Relatics will create that verification for you, which of course is going to save you a lot of work. Added to that, we also have at the bottom, this is for derived elements as well, you have your normal ghost row. And this allows you to create verifications. If you already know the requirement object combination, but you don't want to scroll through the entire list, you can just start a new verification, which I did, and then select the requirement, select the object, and Relatics automatically creates a verification for you. This is the freedom that I was talking about with the required relation. People are now able to create verification on the combination of their choice, regardless of the combination that is in this overview.
Whew. That was a whole mouthful regarding middle and derived elements. Now, maybe to let this sit and digest a little bit with our viewers, do you maybe have a dessert?
Yeah, a few desserts. Actually, 2 desserts for Relatics 6 and 2 for Relatics 5, but we'll move on to that later. For Relatics 6, I want to show you in the application, we actually have 2 things. So these are small features. The first being that we we made an update to the organization of the menu. So if you want to organize your menu with your elements list, you can quickly drag around groups and place them on top of each other or below each other, which has been made a lot easier. And it's been made easier to just grab elements and throw them into different groups without having to click to make them enter the group. They will now automatically enter the group which they are put below. And after that, you can just update and you have your new organization for the menu. The second part, second update is, let's say I go to my settings for my actions element and I want to find a new icon because I don't like this icon. What we've done, we've added a lot more tags to the icon search bar. So it's a lot easier to now find specific icons based on tags that you fill in. So in this case, I filled in requirement and you'll get a lot of examples. I can also, of course, fill in action and get a lot of examples. So I like this hammer more, feels more actionable, and I'll just update that icon, which has been made a lot easier.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there were also some improvements to Relatics 5 for our viewers at home. Until now, we presented you with new features and improvements on Relatics 6, but of course, there is also a lot of projects still running in Relatics 5. So periodically, our development division will bring out some quality of life improvements for Relatics 5 as well.
Yeah, so we have two important quality of life improvements for Relatics 5, and we want to show you how that works. So for Relatics 5, the first improvement is that we've added, or the colleagues for development, again, sorry, I'm a consultant, so I'm trying to say we, but we as a company, of course. A warning was added to the roles and rights in Relatics 5. Normally, you would have your project roles, which are selected for people in the project, so they, for example, can edit certain elements. Let's say somebody is a requirement manager, you have your project role requirement manager, which allows you to edit requirement. But you could also have the possibility of a selected view-only role, and this view-only role only allows you to view data. Now, the view-only role always supersedes the normal role. So what we did, we added a warning to indicate that if somebody has a project role but also a view-only role selected, you get a warning saying that the view-only role supersedes the project role, and you can act accordingly. The second change we made is to web services. Now, this is a very technical, so I won't dive into the specifics, but what we've basically done is we've added the ability to select a location where the web service can find the client credentials. This allows us to integrate with even more applications because now we have the ability to select a location for where the client credentials can be found, which makes it a lot easier, especially with something like OAuth 2.0.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruben.
You're welcome.
Now, we brought you a lot of information, but we also have some questions from our viewers. So for our first question by James, I'm going to turn yet again to you, Ruben.
That's all right.
So James asked, can the map view show a plotted area outline, or is it only based on locations on coordinates?
For now, it's based on locations, but we'll keep improving the standard integration. So then we'll also move on to maybe polygons and things like that, and really area. So for now, it's locations, but based on what you have in ArcGIS, yeah, that can be a possibility in the future.
All right. Awesome. So our second and last question I have so far on my screen is by Martijn. Does the filter option work in the link to user feature?
Yeah, of course, you can still keep filtering and doing exactly the same things as you used to do before. So it doesn't really influence any of the behavior of the overview.
Awesome. Thank you. Those were the viewer questions for today. If you have any more questions, feel free to still send them in via our platform. Oh, I'm just getting another question in my ear on the edge. Can we change the location of the middle element menu button to be below the target instead of the origin element? So when you edit your menu, can you choose where you want to have the middle element menu?
I would have to get back on that. I don't know for sure, but I would really doubt as to whether you would need that, because the entrance to the middle element is below the origin element for a reason, so that you are already visually indicating that that's the origin element it's a part of. And accompanied with the quality reminders that we've added, that's also found on the origin element view. So I would most likely advise you to not do that, but I'm not sure if it's possible to do it. I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you, Jelle, for that question. Now, I see that is actually time. We've had a very, very full episode this time. Our development team has been working very hard over the summer, so thank you for that. I would like to thank Martin and Ruben for being here today once again with me.
I think.
Thank Esri as well, of course, for the great cooperation on the application integration. And of course, thanks to you, the viewer at home, for giving us your time and attention. Our next episode will be on the 5th of November, so we hope you will tune in once again. If you have any questions or you want more information about the Relatics, we have a whole set of options where you can get more informed. You can either contact your account manager, your consultant. You can go to our website, relatics.com. You can also check us on LinkedIn, because we will always post the webinar links there as well. Yes, I think that was about it. You guys happy?
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Happy.
Awesome. With that, we would like to thank you once again and see you next time.